The morning sun was barely breaking through the gray clouds over the quiet town of Fairview when Emily pushed open the door of Sam's Diner, a small roadside restaurant that smelled of coffee, bacon, and old dreams. The bell above the door chimed gently, a sound that had once felt welcoming but now only made her heart race. She kept her eyes low, holding the tiny hand of her daughter, Lily, who clung to her side like a fragile promise she was trying to protect from the world. Emily hadn't planned to stop. She had almost no money left, a few crumpled bills in her coat pocket and enough gas to get to the next town if she was careful. But Lily hadn't eaten since the night before. When they passed the diner and her little girl whispered, "Mommy, that smells nice," Emily's resolve broke. Inside, the diner was half empty, the regulars scattered in booths, quietly stirring coffee or reading newspapers. Behind the counter, an older waitress named Martha glanced up, her eyes tired but kind. Emily gave a faint nod and guided Lily to a corner booth where they could hide in the shadows. She opened the menu, pretending to read, but her stomach twisted. The prices were higher than she'd hoped. A pancake plate cost $6.99. Coffee was $2. She only had $8. She glanced at Lily, whose wide eyes roamed the room, stopping on a man sitting 2 tables away, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, wearing a flannel shirt and a weathered look of quiet solitude. A half-eaten plate of eggs and toast sat before him. He was lost in thought, maybe about his own troubles, until he noticed a small pair of eyes staring at his food. Lily quickly turned away when he caught her gaze, clutching her worn-out stuffed rabbit. Emily's heart sank. She reached across the table and whispered, "Don't stare, sweetheart." But there was no anger in her voice, only exhaustion. She called Martha over and asked softly, "Could we just get one pancake, please? And some water?" Martha hesitated, her eyes flicking from Emily's tired face to the little girl's. She nodded slowly and walked away without a word. At the counter, the man, whose name was Jack Miller, had been pretending not to listen. But something about that moment hit him hard. Maybe it was the way the woman tried to keep her dignity, or the way the girl smiled shyly even though her stomach must have been empty. Jack had been through his own storms, a divorce, a son he hadn't seen in years, a home that felt too quiet for its size. But this small act of quiet struggle, reached into the hollow part of his heart that still remembered what love looked like when it was worn thin. He called Martha over quietly. "Add another order of pancakes," he said. "And a side of fruit. For the little one. But don't tell them it's from me." Martha gave a knowing smile. She'd seen this before, kindness that wanted to stay invisible. When the food arrived, Lily's eyes lit up. "Mommy, look," she gasped. "There's so much." Emily blinked in confusion. "I only ordered one," she said softly to the waitress. But Martha just winked. "Kitchen made a mistake, honey. Happens sometimes." Emily stared down at the steaming plate, golden pancakes, a small bowl of fruit, and even a cup of milk for Lily. Her lips trembled. "Thank you," she whispered, even though she didn't know who to thank. Lily dug in happily, humming a little song as she ate. Emily watched her, torn between relief and guilt. She hadn't eaten herself, she couldn't. The knot in her throat wouldn't let her swallow. Jack kept glancing over his newspaper, pretending not to care, but every small smile from that little girl pulled him deeper into the moment. He didn't know their story, but he didn't need to. Sometimes, the eyes told you enough. When they finished, Emily reached into her pocket, pulling out a $5 bill and 3 ones. She left them neatly under the edge of the plate, along with a quiet thank you to Martha. Then she took Lily's hand and stood up. They almost made it to the door, almost, before Jack looked up again. That's when he saw it. Lily had turned back for one last glance at his table. Her eyes landed on his plate, still holding half a piece of toast and some bacon, and her tiny stomach growled loud enough to echo in the silence. She wasn't staring out of greed. It was the innocent, hungry look of a child who didn't know how to hide her longing. Jack's chest tightened. He set his coffee cup down and stood. "Ma'am," he called gently. Emily froze. Her shoulders stiffened. She hated pity. She turned slowly, clutching Lily's hand. "Yes." Jack hesitated. He didn't want to embarrass her, but the words came from somewhere honest. "You forgot something," he said, holding out a napkin with something folded inside. She frowned and stepped closer. Inside the napkin was a $100 bill. Her eyes widened. "I can't take this," she whispered, shaking her head. "Please." Jack smiled faintly. "You're not taking it, I'm giving it. There's a difference." For a moment, Emily just stared at him, A stranger, yet somehow not a stranger at all. Why? She asked softly. Jack looked down at Lily, then back at her. Because once, someone did it for me. And I promised myself I'd pay it forward. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, and she tried to blink them away. You don't even know us. Jack nodded. Maybe not, but I know what hungry looks like. And I know what pride sounds like when it tries to say, we're fine. Emily pressed the money back into his hand, but he closed her fingers around it gently. Don't argue. Just take your little girl somewhere safe. Maybe get her something sweet after breakfast. Something broke inside her, not out of weakness, but relief. For the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. They left the diner, and as the bell above the door jingled again, Jack watched them through the window, the woman with weary eyes, and the child skipping beside her, clutching her stuffed rabbit. He didn't expect to see them again. But fate had a way of circling back. A few weeks later, Sam's diner was busier than usual. The "help wanted" sign that had been in the window for months was gone. Behind the counter, Martha was smiling at a new waitress, Emily. She'd come back, not to ask for more, but to give back. She'd found a small apartment, enrolled Lily in school, and started piecing her life together one shift at a time. The first paycheck she got, she tried to return the $100. Jack refused. You already did, he said with a smile. You stood back up. Over time, a quiet friendship grew between them. Jack became a regular, always sitting in the same booth, the one near the corner where Emily had first sat that cold morning. Lily would run to greet him, her hair tied with bright ribbons, her laugh filling the diner like sunlight. Sometimes Jack would read her stories after dinner. Sometimes Emily would bring him coffee on the house. Slowly, the wounds that both carried, different but equally deep, began to heal in each other's presence. One winter evening, as snow began to fall outside, Emily locked up the diner after closing. Jack stayed behind to help her clean the tables. She glanced at him and smiled softly. You never told me, she said, who helped you when you were the one in need. Jack looked out the window, where snowflakes danced in the glow of the streetlights. A woman named Mary, he said. Single mom, worked 2 jobs. I was a stupid kid, hungry, broke, and too proud to ask for help. She gave me food anyway, told me someday I'd understand what it meant. Emily smiled. I think she'd be proud. Jack nodded slowly. Maybe she's the reason I stopped that day. Maybe Lily's eyes reminded me of mine. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the heater filling the space. Then Emily spoke quietly. You know, I tried to leave quietly that morning. I didn't want anyone to notice. But you did. Jack met her gaze. Some people are worth noticing. The words lingered in the air like the warmth of fresh coffee. Years passed, and the diner changed hands, but the story of that morning never faded. Locals still spoke about the man who helped a struggling mother and the little girl who grew up to run the place herself. Because yes, years later, Emily became the owner of Sam's Diner. The same place where she'd once counted pennies now bore her name on the sign. And every morning, she made sure that no one ever left hungry. A small frame hung by the counter, a picture of a smiling little girl with syrup on her cheeks and a napkin folded in her hands. Beneath it, a handwritten quote read, "Greater than, kindness doesn't need to be seen to change a life." Jack still came by sometimes, a little grayer, a little slower, but always with that same gentle smile. He'd sit in his corner booth, watching as Lily, now a teenager, carried plates of pancakes to laughing families. And whenever Emily brought him his coffee, they shared a quiet nod, a reminder of the morning that changed everything. Years passed, and Lily grew into a confident young woman, full of life but never forgetting the mornings when hunger had clawed at her little stomach. Emily watched her daughter bloom with a quiet pride, knowing that the love, safety, and small miracles she'd received in that diner had shaped the person Lily would become. Yet, Emily never forgot the man who had quietly given them a chance when they had almost nothing, Jack Miller. One chilly autumn evening, as the wind rattled the diner windows and painted the trees outside with the last amber leaves of the season, Emily noticed a young couple hesitating by the door. They were thin, their clothes worn, their hands wrapped around each other like shields. Their child peeked nervously from behind a small coat, eyes wide and frightened. Emily's heart clenched, and she remembered the day she had stood in this very spot, uncertain, weary, and invisible to the world. She took a deep breath, smoothing the apron over her uniform, and stepped forward. "Welcome to Sam's Diner," she said warmly, her voice carrying across the empty booths. "Can I get you something to eat?" The couple exchanged a glance, almost as if they couldn't believe someone was asking. We don't have much," the mother whispered, her voice trembling. Emily smiled gently, kneeling to meet the child's eyes. "You're welcome here," she said. "Whatever you need." Behind the counter, Lily had noticed the family too. Her little hands flew to the coffee pot as she helped Emily pour a cup,